let's move on to something happier, which is definitely Nioh. Now it's super dark. That's my only complaint, or one of my few like real complaints with this alpha. It's really fucking dark. It's way too dark. You can't see anything. And I'm actually gonna challenge myself and do the best I can and not mention Dark Souls, because it is very Dark Soulsy. But let's try and describe it without the Dark Souls. So, third-person action game. But what this game does that's super interesting to me, and it's so convoluted at first, and you got all these pieces of equipment. Like, do I put this here? I got two weapon slots. I got head armor, I got arms, chest piece. You got all these pieces of armor that you can equip. You got loot dropping for enemies. You have different stances. So with your weapon, you can hold R1 and press any of the face buttons to do different stances. There's a low stance, mid stance, high stance. And then sheath the sword. Or other weapons. And using these different attacks is what makes it different than other action games like Dark Souls, or even like Ninja Gaiden, which I really do think it feels kind of similar in the fighting style. So you got light and heavy attacks in each of these stances. You can change between these stances kind of freely. You're not necessarily going to combo between stances super well. But oh my god, is this good. It is so let's go back. You got the stances. You have low stance, so if something's like on the ground, you can hit it more easily, since it's a low stance. The low stance is weaker but faster, doesn't use as much ki, which is your stamina gauge, the second gauge there. When you run out of ki, you like full stop. Like if you straight up run out of all of it, you're gonna stop and like catch your breath for 2 seconds where you're just vulnerable, and particularly at the beginning, you're just gonna get killed. You can get 3 shot, 2 shot by some of these guys at the beginning, and thankfully you can guard and deflect all damage, but you really got to be on the defensive or on the offensive too, because guarding does drain your ki when you get hit. Mid stance is more your standard everyday stance, and you can see the stance in the bottom right, the little wheel, little circle wheel. Mid stance is your bread and butter of normal attacks. You're not going to use too much stamina. You're going to do decent amount of damage. High stance is when maybe you want to take a risk and you're going to you're going to get the last hit on here, and you need to do it. These are slower attacks. These are way more powerful attacks that use a lot of your stamina or ki. I'm just going to keep calling it stamina. It's hard to, what is ki? And it functions kind of like Ninja Gaiden, and it's a very much, the pacing doesn't feel like Dark Souls. I guess I'm dropping that idea. It's not, it's more like in an action game, so like in a Bayonetta or a Devil May Cry or something. Ninja Gaiden for Team Ninja here. These levels feel like levels from those games. There's a scene in this demo where you like come over a hill, and it feels so much like that village from Ninja Gaiden that you keep going back to in a bunch of the games. Your home village. Except it's dark and on fire. And maybe intentional. It could be an intentional homage. But it's like those levels, but with way fewer enemies. I mean, if you're fighting 3 guys at once, it's not good. You can see me running away and freaking out. And there's also, there's other things you can do. I'll go back to that. The pacing is very different because there's no one floating around. There's very few enemies. There's always, they're getting to jump on you. You're trying to figure out, like, okay, is this a trap? Do I go over here? Looking around corners, baiting guys, like throwing shuriken at them to get their attention, and then they fight you one-on-one. It's all about that, and it's much slower paced a lot of the time than most of these action games like that, but it feels so much more interesting. A very one-on-one battle for a lot of these fights, and as it goes on, you do get better at it. It does get easier. It's still pretty damn tough, That's what I was gonna talk about. The we have the different stances, right? But then the other characters can be in stances, so you can know and look at them and think, okay, this guy's in high stance, so he's gonna do these big attacks, and after that, he's gonna have real low stamina. And when you drain an enemy's stamina, you can do a heavy attack and trigger like this stabbing thing with a sword. That's what stabbing means. And they die, which is great. You definitely want them to die when you're fighting them. But it's kind of tough to trigger, and this is alpha, sure. It feels pretty good for alpha. There are some weird animations, and it's kind of a little janky in certain respects, but for all intents and purposes, you could almost release this as is. Like, it's not that far off from being complete and being done. Maybe it needs some balance changes. There are some weird things. Like some enemies, once they find you, they'll chase you forever. They just will not ever leave you alone. They'll follow you until you're way back at the base. They're like, why are you still following me? That's something a lot of these games don't do. It's weird too. Sometimes they'll be really aggressive. Like when it's one-on-one fight, you'll find guys be more aggressive than if it's two trying to fight you at once. You'll have the one guy kind of hang back in a weird way, but in a nice way, because no, I don't need 16 weird samurai men attacking me with swords at the same time. It's a little funny. The difficulty with the bosses, which I'll actually get into more in a second. The difficulty with the bosses is, I don't want to say unfair. I want to say leaning towards unfair. Is that a no? But before the bosses, in addition to swords, there are spears and hammer/axes. So spears are faster, not as powerful. Hammers, heavier, slower. You get the point. With hammers, I found myself using the low stance because that's the fastest stance on normal enemies if I wanted to use the hammer, or the high stance to do a ton of damage and get like one hit in and then back away. Because there are larger, like ogre demon enemies that you're going to want to kind of hit with. There are attributes with weapons, with like this does fire damage, this does extra lightning damage. There's a special spirit that you have with you. You can activate with circle and triangle pressing at the same time. Once it's charged up, that's the icon in the upper left. Once that is activated, you get a special thing where the crazy shit happens and you get your sword all on fire and you attack a bunch of times. There's stuff like that. There's magic. There's like ninjutsu that you can equip. It's like the shirt. Oh my god, there's so much here. Like there's so much more than just an action game, a normal action game. There's so much more going on. So you can imbue your weapon with fire like I did. That's one of the things you can level up and equip at the home base, like little shrines that are along the way. In addition to that, so you're leveling up by killing all these guys. You get all these things. I've never seen that before. What the hell just happened on the side of my screen? This is why I don't like Windows. There's weird things going on the side of my screen. So everyone you kill gives you experience. You use this experience to level up. There wasn't a shop in the demo, so I don't know if you can use... You also get money separately. So it's not like Dark Souls where you're using the souls as your currency for shops and for leveling up. It seems separate, which is fine. Do whatever you want to do. Don't make it exact copy. Fine. It's not exact copy. It's actually very different. So you're leveling up with all these things. If you die, it leaves them on the ground. All of Dark Souls. It leaves them on the ground. You have to go back and get them and pick them up. You level up and you get new things, and you also get points for the skill tree. So each You're going to get a couple each level, but then you can level up in the area of the katana, the polearm, and the hammer, or axe. The axe is I ended up using a bunch of hammers, just happenstance. You can level up all between that. So you have skill points to use there, all different things like parries and things like from parries to passive boosts to damage or to key damage on the enemy. And then you can also level up stuff like your shuriken or the fire talisman that I have that I can use once each go around. If I go back to the shrine, it reloads, but it also reloads all the enemies, such and such. The levels circle back upon themselves, have shortcuts and secrets and different things. You find yourself in the same way of Dark Souls, getting better at an area, but this is a little different. Like, my skills from the beginning of the beta to the end of the beta are incredibly different. Like, it's just, there's so much to learn. There's all these little pieces, even towards the very end. I guess we'll touch on bosses. There's two bosses, by the way. And the second boss, so here's the thing. So you play the beta, and they tell you before you play it, if you know, beat the boss in the beta, and you get you get to download this thing that proves that you did it, and then you're gonna get something in the final game. I forget what it is. If it's like a weapon, hey, well, go here. You get a weapon or something. So I'm playing the beta, and I play it for like 3 hours. I get to the boss, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm at the boss. I'm gonna fight it. I'm gonna keep going and see what happens. Let's go. I fight the boss, and it's tough. And we'll get back to the bosses. I know I keep saying that. I finally beat the boss. This is about almost 4 hours of playing this demo, which is long. And it's this whole section right here. This is still the first part. You beat it, and you go to this world map screen. And there's where you were on the map, and then there's a shrine on the map, and then there's another spot on the map. And I'm thinking, what's the other spot on the map? Is it just going to say, just kidding, see you in the full game? Or what is it going to do? So I go into the next area. Beat the boss in the beta? I'm not going to do that again. I can barely speak today at all. I don't know what's happening. I'm fumbling over everything. I'm tired. It's bright. I'm like a vampire. I don't know. Vampires are always tired, I guess. So I loaded this new area, and I'm thinking, it loads up a whole area, and it looks dark and ominous, and it's raining, and I'm thinking, okay, this is just, maybe I'm just going to run in this area, and it's going to show me a cutscene, and it's going to end. End of demo, right? Or I'm going to run, and there's going to be a couple of guys, and then maybe another boss really quick, and then it's going to end. No. This thing that already took me 4 hours has a whole nother area that's just as big as the area you were in. No, just as big. Just as big as the previous area. It is actually double the length I thought it was going to be. It took me 7 hours to beat this entire demo, which is crazy. Insane. When you think it took me 35, low 30s hours to beat Dark Souls 3. This demo, Vampire, that's true. This demo took so goddamn long. And 2 of those hours are fighting the bosses. So back to the bosses in the beta. The first one is this guy with these, like, what are they called now? They're not like ball and chain type of weapons that you do, but he's like has 2 of them and he's doing that. And he's fine, and the boss is fun, and you can dodge and whatever. But he's a bit unfair, and I did say this earlier. The bosses do seem a little cheap, and so I fought them a little cheap, especially the second one, a little cheaply. So the boss, he'll throw these chains at you, and then eventually, about halfway through the fight, the chains break. And now he runs around the map, and he starts throwing the balls that were on the chains at you. And there's no problem with that. Everything's okie dokie. Right, Jar Jar? Yes. Thanks, Jar Jar. Everything's fine. Sure. But these balls that he's throwing at you, which is a weird sentence, do maybe 50%, 40% of your health. And when you can only heal yourself 4 or 5 times in a fight, it becomes incredibly frustrating to fight him when he'll swing shit around and flatten you in the face and then do like a jump attack when you can't move and kill you. Because his other jump attack will flat out kill you 80% of your health. Like, it's crazy. It's easy to dodge, but if you've already been stunned and hit into something, you're just instantly dead. So it's a little cheap in that respect. So like, the fight is fair and fun and interesting for the most part if you can dodge those attacks. And it took me almost an hour, about 40 minutes of trying him to get it down. And I got him down so much to like a sliver of a health, and then you die because he throws a fucking ball at you. Ridiculous, man. Anyway, you beat him. You beat the boss. Sure. Do the whole next area, which is tough. Just as tough. Fucking ridiculous in certain ways. And eventually you get the shortcut and it becomes much easier. Then I get to that boss. And this boss is where I learned you can kind of stun at certain points. When it's like this lightning jungle cat, the size of a truck, and I could throw a shuriken at him at a certain point during his attacks. I never got it down exactly, but I did it 3 or 4 times. That would drain his ki entirely. And when someone's ki is drained, specifically a boss, I wasn't able to trigger the special attack on them when their ki is drained, which you're supposed to, which you can on normal enemies. But when their ki is drained, this is very important. When their ki is drained, you can just hit them and interrupt all their attacks for a good amount of time. And this is when you want to activate your special little spirit animal that hopefully you've had charged up, and you do that attacks on him while he can't attack you. Anyway, this lightning dog can a bunch of different attacks, sure, whatever. He also has poison, which is just a dick move. Oh, he's a chimera, so he's got a snake tail. I forgot about that. That's why he had poison. And a monkey head. He looks really weird. He can summon these pillars of lightning, which straight up, if 2 of them hit you, you're dead. And you just have to run away. So I found, I fought him a couple times, and maybe the second or third time I found that the lightning wouldn't hit the ground because there was something above it. There was like a roofing thing. And I determined, oh, the entrance of this area also has a roof. So if I hide under the roof, the lightning can't hit me. And then he just has his other attacks to attack me with. And so that's how I did the fight, right? Hiding at the front of the room, underneath the roof, so his lightning can't hit me. And every other attack he does is fairly easy to dodge. Still very dangerous, but you can block most of them. Not the super powerful one thing, thankfully. And then I beat him. I beat him, but he poisoned me right before I beat him. And before I could activate the U1 sword in the ground, I died of poison. And I'm thinking, okay, what's the game gonna do? I hope it doesn't make me have to fight him again after I just cheaply won, even though it was still kind of difficult. No, I had to fight him again. And this was like, it took me another half hour, even with my cheap way of fighting him. It is still ruthless. These bosses don't mess around. It is not fun playtime. And fighting this lightning dog in a field out in plain sight is not the way you want to fight him. His range attack is that crazy lightning thing, so fuck that. His other range attack is like a lightning tongue thing where he sweeps lightning, which somehow that's how lightning works. And his other attacks are easy to dodge, but you have to be vigilant, and hiding under the freaking gondola or whatever was the only logical way. Fighting him out in the open leaves you open to disaster. And I will not stand for it, especially when he's being cheap with his stupid, oh, I do 80% of your HP with my lightning strikes. Oh, thank you. Thank you, guy. It's wonderful. But those weird balance inconsistencies, and I hope they don't change that, because God, that fight would be tough without that. Jesus. Those things aside, those little nitpicks aside, this was amazing. Straight up, if this game is supposed to come out this year, if this game is delayed out of this year, this demo will probably make my top 10 games of the year. I loved it. I loved this demo so much. It is exactly what I want from an action game. We don't get action games like this anymore very often, What was the last one we got? Bayonetta 2? Like 2 years ago? We don't get games like this. It's definitely slower paced and more in the Dark Souls style of slow combat and difficulty. Difficulty underlined again. But it is so much fun. I loved every second of it. Learning new enemy attacks, leveling up things, even though the level up system isn't super important. You don't necessarily have to be super vigilant about it. There's all these different things. There's the different gods you can have in that little circle. I didn't try any of the other ones, but there were 3 other ones, and they seemed to be tied to an element, so this one was fire. And I loved it. I loved this so much. I find myself thinking about this demo, this alpha demo that is going to be taken offline. That's the upsetting thing about it. It's going to be taken offline because this was some alpha test for the multiplayer, I guess. Like I tried it. I summoned one guy in once, and it kind of worked. It seemed laggy. I wasn't uploading or doing anything on my end, so I don't know if it was him or if it was just the servers. Who knows? Other than that, when people die, they leave these, and you'll see them as weird little blood stains. You can activate them and fight them. You can fight that character that died, which is super interesting. And those guys are kind of difficult. You're fighting a human, and you get loot from it, and you can, by doing that, you get the item that lets you call people in. So if you can't call anyone in for help, you can just go fight someone's dead body, which is weird, and then do that. And I loved it. I have not since Demon Souls, which I loved, I'm a big Souls fan, have I really felt something like this. Like Demon Souls at the first playthrough and before you get all the baggage of previous entries when you're playing Dark Souls 3, that's what this felt like in terms of difficulty, in terms of things that were happening, and I loved it. I don't know what else to say about it. This was phenomenal. And the fact that it's only 7 hours is ridiculous. That's too much. You did too much. You gave me too much. And I loved it. Loved it. It's cheap and ridiculous at times, but I think they should kind of address. And particularly in the second area, the difficulty ramps up for a bit, and then you kind of catch up with new loot and new stuff. That's the other thing. There's loot everywhere. When you kill the boss, loot pops up like it's Destiny. There's little spires of, oh, this is purple loot. Oh, this is blue loot. Like, it's crazy, and you have to deal with. So everything has durability, and it doesn't recover. So you're gonna have to use items to recover the durability. And this happens more often than I would like, particularly towards the end, the second area, or after the first boss onward. But you're getting all this loot. You're getting tons of loot everywhere. From everything. Oh, I killed a special guy. Here's 16 things flying. It's like in Diablo 3, those little loot goblins, and you kill them and shit flies everywhere. That's what it feels like. It's so good. I loved it. I loved this. I loved it so much. This is my game of the year. Especially since nothing's coming out this year that super interests me. Nioh. Loving it. Here's my mouse. Oh, you can't see my mouse. That doesn't get picked up. Yes, silly. Go download it. Just do it.